That's September. It's the 21st of September, 2021. I'm Dana Durnford, your host, the nuclearproctologist.org. Hope everybody's doing good. On this Tuesday, except for the nuclear industry, of course. EU to ease restrictions on food imports from Japan. That's not a good idea. It's not from Japan per se that they're talking about. It's a big country they're talking about right alongside of ongoing multiple nuclear meltdowns. We got a poll up on the page. By the way, I'm Dana Durnford. The nuclearproctologist.org is my site. That's where I hang my shield. And you can call in, and 24 hours a day, you can call that number. If I hear it, I'll answer it. 709-589-4406. We're trying to have a conversation on this planet about simple stuff. Like, why would you want to eat food from a nuclear wasteland? Why not grow it somewhere else? And why not have a referendum? Hi, everybody. So we got a poll going. I got 100%, 9 votes, saying they should have a referendum. Huh. Taiwan had a referendum, and you know what they said? No. Overwhelmingly no. We don't want your murder food in our country. Hi, everybody. We got a comment. Can we change planets? Well, only if we can take the 8 million, what's left of the 8 million species with us. We got to think about them too, right? At least let's hold the nuclear industry accountable. Hi, folks. Not just cancer, how low doses of radiation cause heart diseases and strokes. Heart diseases and strokes. And liver problems and lung problems and respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. There's Alzheimer's and dementia and autism, diabetes and Down syndrome. There's schizophrenia. There's 1,800 illnesses will show up, not just cancer. When radioactive cesium enters the body, 75% of it lodges in the heart muscles, or the muscles including the heart. And cesium-137 in particular, and iodines, and gamma product immediately damages the heart muscles. They're not slow acting. And in one community in Fukushima prefecture, in a single month, in just this 1 month period, there was an extra 12,700 people died of heart attacks. Not counting cancer skyrocketed, cardiac diseases also skyrocketed, but an extra 12,700 people dying of heart attacks in a single month. That wasn't just 1 month, that was every month that was happening. And these abnormalities. And then you see the crazy, bizarre, lunatic media and medical professionals saying we got to stop the reports from coming out talking about the side effects of Fukushima health. See, 50 becquerels a kilogram in adults lead to irreversible lesions in the vital organs. It's all downhill from there. You're under siege. So the problem with eating radioactive food is it goes in your heart, or goes in your body. Your body, no matter where it's to, attacks it with white blood cells every second for the rest of your life. What that means, though, is now you have to displace red blood cells to create the white blood cell. And the red blood cell carries oxygen and nutrition throughout your body. So there's an immediate effect, and it's sustained for the rest of your life. And the more you eat, the more white blood cells you produce. So you can have leukemia in 1 week if you eat a lot of it, no problem at all, and be dead next week. That's how this actually works. See, it's not like you got to wait for cancer to show up 20 years down the road. This can kill you right quick. Eating it is one of the worst ways to go about it. You're introducing it in your body. Why would you do something like that? What's the catalyst for you to do something like that? And at 50 becquerels a kilogram, irreversible lesions in your vital organs. Why would you take a chance? So what's really terrifying is just a handful of people in the EU can make it so everybody in the EU is eating radioactive food and never know they're eating it. That's some weird, bizarre, twisted, sadistic thing to do to people, is not give them an option. You know why they have labels on foods? So you can make a decision, but they're not going to put radiation on the label. So like even food coloring is highly regulated. There's 3,000 chemicals they actually got in foods that are regulated. But they're not going to regulate radiation. It's not supposed to be in food. This is why we have terrorism law. In fact, they wanted Al-Qaeda to go to Fukushima prefecture and grow food and said, no, that's way out of our league. We only want to kill the military. We don't want to kill women and children. Top cancer doctor, nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. The most carcinogenic thing that exists. And Goddard Journal, he's not supposed to be there. He's a troll, actually. And Ernie Gunnarsson was pumping him, eh? He's not even an academic. He attacked me numerous times on his site. Children's risk of cancer for radiation is 10 to 100 times higher than an adult who had the same exposures. Like, I bludgeoned Goddard years ago, but they took down my site a few weeks back with 24,000 subscribers, no strikes, and no emails telling me why. Child's risk of cancer from radiation 10 to 100 times higher than an adult with the same exposure. Yeah, this should scare the daylights out of people. Look at what the officials, a handful of people, like the EU is doing right now, sharply raised the radiation levels for residents to get iodate pills after the nuclear meltdowns. And they raised it 75 times higher than the World Health Organization recommends for children. Wrap your mind around how incredibly evil that actually is. And you can start to appreciate how evil the EU, a handful of people, making a decision like this. Why not have a referendum? How's the poll going? We got 11 votes, and everybody says yes, they should have a referendum. The Fukushima radioactive murder food referendum in the EU, and that includes Iceland and Norway too, by the way, which is planning on doing it. We'll get to it coming up. Just want to lay out this story so you can really wrap your mind around the nuances. NRC wanted the radiation exposure limits 100 times higher than the Environmental Protection Agency, which are lunatics, by the way. Radiation and health specialists, children with over 11 becquerels a kilogram of cesium start to see heart problems. Why would you do that to your countries? All your in different countries under the EU flag. A handful of people are going to poison all the children and make it legal to poison the children. Why is Japan so evil? Why are they so insistent upon poisoning everybody? Why do they hate us so much? Why do they hate children from Japan so much? Irreversible heart damage for children with 50 becquerels a kilogram. Irreversible heart damage for children with 50 becquerels a kilogram. That should terrify you. Think about the radiation in small doses could actually be disproportionately worse, says the report, and the doses spread out over time might be more dangerous than all given at once. So eating it over time, in other words, is the best way of destroying everybody's countries and communities and children and the women of the population. If you sterilize all the women, you can't have any more babies, for goodness sakes. Not only that, females are extremely vulnerable to radiation. They're way more vulnerable than males are, by the way. Thyroid abnormalities, and they know this too, right? And the more radiation you got in your body, the less your body can split cells. And it's all downhill if you can't do that. Thyroid abnormality in 55% of Fukushima girls tested aged 11 to 15. 3 million children required treatment because of Chernobyl. Chernobyl was a 200-ton reactor, a brand new one with no fuel pools at the top of the buildings. Each of the reactors in Japan, Fukushima Daiichi No. 1 plant, were the biggest in the world at the time. They were 800-ton reactors. They were pure uranium, pure plutonium, unlike Chernobyl, which was mostly graphite. Not only that, Fukushima reactor buildings, the boiling water reactors, had the fuel pools at the top of the buildings, and they'd have no repository anywhere in Japan or anywhere else. And so the fuel pools were actually stuffed with 40 years of reactor cores. And they make Chernobyl look like a paper towel, but Chernobyl was brutal. That was brutal. They actually closed 9,000 farms in Ireland, Scotland, United Kingdom, 3,000 miles away. But the EU is going to eat food right from the nuclear meltdown. So imagine Ireland, Scotland, United Kingdom closes 9,000 farms because of radioactive fallout from Chernobyl, but then turns around and imports food from the Chernobyl exclusion zone and the nuclear meltdown area. Would that make any sense? Because that's what the EU basically is doing, right? Except Fukushima is infinitely worse. It's incontestably worse than Chernobyl. Chernobyl, by the way, is brutal. 3 million children. That's permanent. If you get sick from radiation, it's actually permanent. And inhaling just one hot particle, everything from a nuclear meltdown, by the way, is a hot particle, right? And they sprayed salt water on it for the first 40 days. So all the water was atomized in aerosol, ionized and radiated, and released as plumes on top of the China syndromes. Why are we still talking about this 10 years later? Why is this not settled already? Why is there no academics having this conversation? Why is there no nuclear scientists anywhere on the planet having this conversation? Why is all the media regurgitating propaganda? Why is nobody having a conversation? What the hell? Are we actually on a planet? Do we just... 43% of kids have thyroid abnormalities, new Fukushima city test results. 43%. It used to be 1 per million. There's many ways this can get into your body too. And so plutonium goes for the bones, so does strontium, so does neptunium, so does americium. Cesium and iodine will go for muscles and soft tissues. Cesium will also aggregate in your thyroid, not just iodines, by the way. Inhalation, ingestion. It also can find its way in through your hair follicles. Top radiation expert, again, let me repeat this, 50 becquerels a kilograms in humans, adults. Children are 100 times more vulnerable. 50 becquerels a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions in the vital organs. The only thing can happen now is you're going to get all kinds of illnesses when that happens to you. Your immune system now is permanently compromised. You're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally benign and innocuous and harmless. Scientists, the slower you spread radiation dose, the more effectively it produces cancers and inherited defects. And Japan is going the very best way of destroying the world. Hello there, Michigan.
Hey, how's it going?
So, folks, the person on the phone here has an extremely sophisticated testing device for radiation. And over the years, you've called it many times with shocking numbers found in the water and food. And you got some more for us tonight by chance?
Yeah, in case anybody hasn't caught me before, I've tried, I've seen a few people here and there, since 2011, and I couldn't find anybody that I thought was actually given the true story on this. But like I called in before, one of the main things I was looking at was the rain, because if it's in the rain, then the plants absorb it, and then it's in the food. But since we talked last time, back on 6/25, I've been testing for two isotopes, americium and cesium-137. You said
right.
Likes to make you puke.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but it does tell the story. Since americium is there with it, then,
right.
You can...
Everything else is going to be in that sample. Yeah.
Yeah. I got 13,066 counts per minute per liter.
Wow.
Between the two isotopes, these will vary. Sometimes they could be 80, 100, 200, 500. But this isn't going away. It's not like since 2015 when I started this machine up, it's like gone away. It's been consistent to elevating, and I've tested a lot of different types of food, and you're eating it. I can go over a couple of things. I wrote everything down, over the years. Sardines, the last one I tested back in June, 404 counts per minute. Now, I've gotten different amounts from different sardines. I'll buy different cans of them that say whether it's from the Atlantic or Pacific or, Poland or whatever. But the last one I tested was, 404 counts. Yeah. 254 of cesium and 149, 0.9 of americium. Like
these are hot particles. Yeah.
Before. Yeah. Now, not everything shows up positive. This stuff is pretty tricky. Some stuff will just show up, without unshielding practices. Some stuff won't. I've tried like the same food source, unshielding it and just leaving it, and it will come up different. Like the rain I'm talking about, it's actually an easy test because I know a lot of people have Geiger counters. I would say just simply take a paper towel and wipe your car, and if you pick it up on a Geiger counter, you can bet the cesium's there. Because every time I get a high Geiger counter reading,
Yeah.
The cesium and the americium is always there.
Now, my Geiger counter, I have a Geiger counter up in the right hand of the screen. It's not going to pick up plutonium, folks, but he can find the plutonium in his, if he actually looks for it with equipment. So it's good equipment, and you're finding hot particles on a regular basis now since 2015. So they're not going to go away for thousands.
Yeah.
They're not going away for thousands of years, right?
I'm thinking millions, because the core's melted into the water table, so it's a constant feed.
Right. And the ocean evaporates. Well, there was. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Plutonium might be 240,000 years for a half-life.
Just for a half-life, yeah.
Yeah, just for a half-life. Even cesium-137, 30 years, but that might take at least 300 years, but it's constantly fissioning.
And now,
you're constantly
like that material, it's making everything else close to it radioactive too, see? Is what a lot of people can't wrap their mind around. So if you get a lot of it in the tree, if you get a lot of it landing on a tree, for instance, it doesn't need to be sucked up by the tree. It'll radiate the leaves on the tree. And the food, of course. And
including us. Now, the
Right.
last time I peed in a cup, some lady said, "Hey, why don't you test me?" I said, "Okay, give me some hair, pee in a cup." I've said that exact same thing. I didn't have any cesium in me, but I did have a little americium. But this last time around, I ended up with 225 counts per minute in my piss. And then another 117 of americium. So it's in us. I eat this pretty much. I eat pretty good stuff, but I don't think it matters what you eat. Whether you're eating cows or goats or chickens or whatever, it's in the plants. It's in everything. Now it's been in us for years.
it is, yeah.
But
Right away, too.
Yeah.
Within the first month, we were in a saturated environment. So now, despite that, and I agree with everything you're saying wholeheartedly, by the way, would you buy food from Fukushima Prefecture and eat it? From ground zero?
No. Well, I tell you what I did do, and I did mention this last time, is I thought, well, I'll go get some, I went and found like a Japanese store with, all the imported food, and it was pretty high.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but the sake, what I did find was sake from different cities
Right.
had different levels.
Scary.
So you don't know what you're getting.
Like the rule of thumb is you don't buy food from Japan because they're taking the food from the Fukushima prefecture, shipping it to other prefectures, relabeling it, and then shipping it to other countries where it's relabeled again, and then shipping it to North America. And some of it's coming direct here, of course, right? Yeah. It's very dangerous.
So if and then you have, like, 50 million bags of this stuff.
250,000 tons a year of just rice from the Fukushima prefecture. They never stopped producing it, right? And so my big problem was that's ground zero. I'm actually going to cover that later in the show here. But my problem is ground zero, that's the last spot you want to be getting food from. And so tonight we're covering should the EU have a referendum? Because Taiwan had a referendum on Fukushima food, and they emphatically said no, never. Of course, it's going to get shipped in anyway, but at least it's not coming in constantly through the main sources, right?
Yeah. Now, when I said different levels from different cities, I got 200 pounds per minute per liter from sake from one city, but that's not even including all of the other isotopes. There's hundreds of them.
Right.
So, it'll be in the tens of thousands of pounds.
Yeah, that's...
Besides all the beta and gamma emitters.
Right, I've heard experts saying that you got to multiply it by 600. Whatever's on your Geiger counter, you need to multiply it by 600 to get the real number, because you can't find the majority of the fission products, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's the Geiger counter.
Right, because the Geiger counter is just gamma, right? Yeah.
Now, the spectrometer has a sodium iodide scintillation tube, which is way, way more sensitive. But I'm only testing for 2 isotopes, and I can see, I've sent you pictures of the spectrum.
Right, yeah.
Where you can see all the rest of the black. And I've actually done tests in the past where I would highlight and add up the whole spectrum. I did that one time on my furnace filter, and it is just massive.
Wow.
What collects in the filter, what collects in there. Now, the spectrometer only picks up gamma rays. My Geiger counter isn't actually a Geiger counter. I asked for one specifically that will pick up betas and alphas along with it.
Wow, yeah.
So the one I have, I probably sent you clips of it, but it's an analog. But what I asked for was one that would pick up the other types of emitters. So when I say, if I pick it up on a Geiger counter, it's actually called a survey meter.
Right, it's much more sophisticated than what I'm using.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, okay, I'm gonna let you go, I guess, because I got a lot to get through.
Okay.
But feel free to call in any time. I do the same time each night. The shows start the same time each night. They're 10 o'clock my time, whatever everybody else's time. And so if you're doing tests or you got some documentation you want to throw out, to give me a call.
Oh, yeah, it's all written down, every single one.
Okay, my friend. God bless. Thank you again.
Okay, all right, God bless.
Yeah, God bless. Good night. Yeah, bye-bye. And so that's crazy documentation. We appreciate that so much. So the plume covered the northern hemisphere. That's the Pacific, and this is the Atlantic. EU is over here. EU got covered. But see, we can't change that. That happened. But we can change not buying food from ground zero. Why would you buy food from ground zero? And so if you have a referendum, then all of a sudden people are trying to figure out what's going on. They might find me, right? You know what I'm saying? And so they should, because then they get actual documentation that can make an informed decision. So when you see nearly 3,000 evacuees rushed to hospital by ambulances from shelters in Fukushima, Iwate, and Miyagi, these were hot zones and still are. They were rushed to the hospital. Like, we've seen all kinds of earthquakes where people evacuated, typhoons and cyclones and hurricanes, where almost 10 to 15 million people have evacuated. We've never seen that happen. That's only happened for nuclear meltdowns. Because it wrecks your DNA and your chromosomes, right? So a single particle can end up causing a tumor and eventually into a major metastasized cancer. But long before that, you can have up to 1,800 illnesses, right? Because your immune system's compromised. So many diseases can take you out now before you end up with cancer. And they've led the population by the nose for 75 years thinking, the majority of people think they can only get cancer. So if there's no cancer because of the propaganda, then apparently you're okay. For a lot of people think that way. But that's simply not true. And you can get cancer pretty quickly if you start eating it. So 179 microsieverts per hour, that's not how you should count it at a elementary school. You should count it in atomic decays, the actual atoms that are floating around in the air, because they're breathing it in. Microsieverts is like if you walk past fuel rods that got some shielding and the isotopes are not floating around, and you're getting a shine, like a gamma shine or an alpha or a neutron burst or something like that. And so microsieverts, you probably would measure it in sieverts, mind you, but that's why you would use microsieverts. They use microsieverts to trick you. So 179 microsieverts, it's impossible to really say how many atoms we're talking about. But let's just say 50,000 atoms per square meter at hot spots at the bus stop and the main gate and the schoolyard and the pool and the gym. And so the nuclear industry is so heartless, they won't evacuate the children. This is what really makes the nuclear industry different from everybody else. Their job apparently is to murder and poison and destroy everything, all species and humans. We've never seen them caring about what the harms they're causing. We've never seen them actually admit, right, that they should not be. You know, if you show that to a nuclear scientist, they're going to like, yeah, well, you know, that works out to this many a year and every 10 years and blah, blah, blah. Like, this is, instead of saying, well, they should get the children editor, they need to take the school, bring it to the ground, and find a repository and store it. No, the nuclear industry will always try to say, well, it's not so bad. It's worse if you were in so-and-so because there are 300 microsieverts. So instead of saying, my goodness, get the children editor immediately because they're being harmed, nuclear academics won't do that. They won't say that. In fact, they won't weigh in on the conversation. When was the last time I had a story where a nuclear scientist was having a debate about the subject? We haven't. They roll out Ernie Gunnarsson and Helen Caldicott. These are controlled opposition. We got them lying repeatedly about Reactor 4. And if anybody should know Reactor 4 fuel pool, should be Ernie Gunnarsson, who made the assemblies for 70 different reactors, just like Fukushima. If he doesn't know the fuel pool is destroyed, I'll show you what I mean by that. In fact, I'll show you really simply what I mean by that. So the fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. There's a depiction. Hang on. So the fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. And so they're 190-foot buildings, 150 feet wide. That's Reactor 4 over there. Ernie Gunnarsson is trying to convince people it looks like that behind him. I put a picture here of what it actually looks like. It looks like that. So why is Ernie Gunnarsson and Megan Gunnarsson trying to convince people that everything is normal and they got the fuel at the pool when the pool doesn't exist? We are kamikazes. The public needs to realize that's a very real danger remains at the plant. But it's hard because you got people like Ernie Gunnarsson, right, who got all kinds of degrees. So why would Ernie Gunnarsson lie? I can tell you why I think he lies. Only he can tell you why he's lying. But he is lying, for sure. That's not an opinion or a conjecture. That's a fact. Seeing the mountains of radioactive waste in Yokohama, I feel the ominous weight of the nuclear crisis, which had seemed a distant affair to me until then. So people might not understand that they picked up, it's actually 60 million one-ton bags of radiation, where they're growing food, by the way. Fukushima newspaper editor, we don't report on the health risks from radiation because people might worry. Well, first off, why did you abandon that shop? Well, because it's radioactive. But you're growing food closer to Fukushima Nuclear Meltdown than that shop is. And you couldn't find radiation in the children, but you got 30 million one-ton bags. They picked these bags, filled it up with radiation, left them where they're to, and then they continued to grow food there. It's shocking that the Japanese nuclear emergency director says local residents have no right to avoid the radiation exposure. They have no right. Shocking. The only reason they picked up all these bags was to trick people into going back and to grow food there. So in the Fukushima prefecture, every organism in Fukushima prefecture is contaminated with radiation. Every organism. Say 1.4 million atomic decays per minute per kilogram detected in worms' feces 60 kilometers from the nuclear meltdown. So if you eat the food from this area, you're going to destroy the children and women, and most importantly the women and the children and the adults, the males. You have to protect the females. The EU is going the very best way of destroying the European Union and all countries. So is Iceland, so is Norway. Why would you do something like that? So when you see all of these bags, do you think that they got all those bags because they're bored? 14,000 becquerels per square meter in a rice paddy from Fukushima plant. Crops to be sold in Japan that year. Pre-Fukushima, the limits were 0.1 becquerel a kilogram was the limit. Right? So 14,600 becquerels a kilogram, and you're going to sell it, but the limit pre-nuclear meltdown was 0.1 becquerel a kilogram. Hang on there, we'll play that clip of Helen Caldicott. They're talking about it in the comments section there. Cough is. Bear with me. The Japanese are very, very tidy people. What did I do with that, I wonder? Hang on. Because I got a lot of clips of Helen, right? I got a lot of clips of Helen. Let's try this again. Oh yeah, Helen Caldicott, right. Here we go. I got it. All right, let me double check the volume.
me ask you this. You've said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4 collapses, that you would evacuate your family from Boston. How close are we to that?
Who knows? Who knows if there's going to be an earthquake greater than 7 that'll disassemble building 4 and maybe building 3. And that's another terrible thing, because building 3, if that collapses onto its corium of molten lava, huge amounts of radiation will be released. So I don't know. They say it's an act of God. I don't believe in God, but who knows? We can't predict, except to say that there are many earthquakes in this area all the time, and Japan is an earthquake-ridden island, and we don't know.
Do you think we would ever know the truth of what's going on there? And the reason I ask is because we've seen coverage in the national news media here in the United States from ABC News and others that take video cameras in, saying that they're being given exclusive access to number 4 in the removal of the fuel rods, which is said to have begun. And what we see in the video being shared here in America is a pristine interior building. It doesn't look like a building in which the top blew off in a hydrogen explosion. There are many out there, like Hattrick Penry. I sent you a PDF document, a 445-page PDF document called Plumegate. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to look at that. But there are many that have looked at the Freedom of Information Act documents.
I've read it.
Okay, what's your take? Can we believe anything coming out of Japan, out of TEPCO, or out of the American news media?
Yes, and I think Patrick Hendrick goes too far, and I don't agree with some of the stuff he says. You've got to be really up to date with your facts and totally... The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of building 4, and it does look pristine, but that doesn't mean a thing. They're up to date with your facts and totally...
That was their side.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings...
So here's Helen Caldicott saying, the picture to the left is the real one, not the one to the right. And she's saying the Japanese are very tidy people, and they have boy robots. And boy robots are humans. It's outrageous, by the way. Rice leaf concentrates radioactivity 600 times greater than the water used for its cultivation. Okay, so here's the story. This is 2017, this one. I just want to walk back to 2017. EU looks at lifting import curbs on Fukushima rice. And Tohoku Marine Products wild vegetables. Wild vegetables. They picked up 60 million bags, but not in the force. At present, the EU requires that radiation inspection certificates be submitted. Now, first off, you can't trust a country that with the legacy that they got. So they left a corporation in charge instead of nuclear academics, nuclear scientists, nuclear universities, nuclear companies that specialize in nuclear waste, right? They left a stock market group of people in charge who know nothing. They're not decommissioned authorities. So the fact that they wanted certificates means they're poisoning everybody in the EU. And you can't avoid poisoning people getting food from a nuclear wasteland. You can't get food from a nuclear wasteland. But in 2017, the EU proposed removing regulations for seafoods and shrimp and crab and octopus and yellowtail, red bream and bluefin tuna from 7 prefectures of Fukushima: Miyagi, Guma, Ibaraki, Tochigi, Chiba, which is, by the way, right by Tokyo, and Iwate. So the EU had restrictions on Chiba, which is just 20 kilometers away from Tokyo. So why would you eat food from any of the 14 prefectures just on the basis of that? And certain wild vegetables from 7 prefectures, including Akita, Nagano, and Yamagata. So in other words, almost every prefecture all 14 prefectures in the northern part of Japan. Kyoto News used the term hot zone to describe Miyagi, Iwate, Chiba prefectures, not just Fukushima. So Fukushima is a hot zone, right? Is that not a hot zone? That's the definite. When you pick up 60 million one-ton bags, that's a hot zone. And we're almost to the story. Several million people will need to be evacuated from around Fukushima plant if the government uses the same scale as Chernobyl. And Japan's handling of the disaster is far worse than the Soviet Union. The rice fields. They're not picking up in the rice fields for something to do, because they picked up in the rice fields radiation. These are 1-ton bags of radiation, so they can grow rice there. They don't care about anything, including themselves or their own loved ones. Do you really think they care about you? All of eastern Japan evacuated if the Fukushima plant was abandoned. All of eastern Japan to be evacuated. So what they done was they went out and shanghaied all the homeless and destitute and victims of society for 10 years straight. That's what they've been doing. Okay, EU to ease restrictions on food imports from Japan. And what they show you a picture of a mushroom. And mushrooms, of course, are the worst food when it comes to radiation. They aggregate the most radiation of all the foods on the planet. Mushrooms have this bizarre ability. Well, there's a fungus that's worse, but mushrooms is a fungi, right? Mushrooms is the worst food, and growing it indoors is not going to stop the radiation. You got to have oxygen, and they aggregate more radiation. The European Union will ease its import restrictions on Japanese food products introduced after the 2011 meltdowns. Not calling it like it is, treating it with the respect that it deserves. 2011 multiple nuclear power plant reactors melting down. Don't do stuff like that. So, you know those bags are from a nuclear meltdown, okay? They're harvesting rice, the golden rice, right alongside of it. Would you buy that and give that to your loved ones and your children and your friends and your families and eat it yourself? Is there anybody on the planet that would buy that and eat it and give it to their loved ones, knowing that it's right alongside of thousands of 1-ton bags, millions of pounds of radioactive soil, like heavily radioactive, up to 100,000 becquerels a kilogram? Is there anybody? So on the poll, we got 15 votes. Everybody says they should have a referendum in the EU so they can make up their own mind. Do they want to be poisoned? EU to lift import curbs on rice from Fukushima. More deals are likely. So, why would you grow food dressed like that in paper suits? And why would you grow it in a nuclear wasteland? Why would you work in a nuclear wasteland like that with a paper suit on, let alone work there? The EU disclosed its rule relaxation, the first since November 2019. This is how they do it. They do it in increments over several years, and people become complacent. Iceland and Norway and 2 other non-EU European countries will also make a similar rule change. Well, if that's true, why didn't you name them? Right? Why wouldn't you name them? I only serve one king says, I bet the EU has been importing the food all along, which is 100% correct. Why are people buying food? Well, that's the nuclear industry got those positions, see? There's only a handful of people making the decision. So the nuclear industry takes over that handful of positions, puts their people in positions of authority, and then they say, come on, let's import it. We make the rules, so let's do it. Whereas Taiwan had an actual referendum. Considering Japan's export records, the number of radiation check certificates issued to the region in the country is expected to drop to 0, and that of the certificates of origins, which show the products are not from the restricted area, by some 70%. A nuclear wasteland, an actual nuclear wasteland. Now that was the bread basket of Japan and the Asian countries. But you had a major nuclear event, and the harm is not going away for millions of years. Grow it somewhere else. Don't grow it in a nuclear wasteland. Why are you so friggin' evil? The easing of the restrictions will greatly reduce the burden of administrative work and possibly increase exports, a bizarre minister official had said. These are students from Tokyo. They were brought in Niigata, or Nami rather, to help plant rice, because a farmer, nobody would work there because it's a radioactive wasteland, but the students at the university didn't know any better. So I'm going to cover that story next. This is a picture from a story complaining that people are calling the food radioactive when they're growing it right alongside of the bags. Like, how do you wake up one morning and say, I know, let's grow food right alongside all those bags of radiation over there, honey? She said, my God, you're brilliant. However, the EU still has import restrictions on some fishery products. So the stuff in the ocean is more contaminated than the stuff on land. And wild mushrooms from some prefectures. But not Fukushima. Other prefectures outside the actual nuclear meltdown site. They're okay. Stuff around the nuclear plant, fine. Stuff outside of Fukushima prefecture, maybe we got to put some restrictions on them. Because there's only a handful of people. It's the nuclear industry hates your guts. It's trying to murder you, and it's doing a really good job of it. Why are you letting them vomit all over you? Japan will continue negotiations to remove the restrictions. So Japan is desperate to poison everybody. Everybody should buy something from Japan and burn it, put it on video, and burn it, and put the video up on YouTube. Wait for the winds to blow back towards Japan, though. Try making that up on your own. You had children walking past Geiger counters with toys, stuffed toys in their hands. Fukushima families on the edge of the meltdown. Nobody trusts the government anymore. And the officials afraid of triggering exodus. The officials are monsters. You can't call them officials. How can you call these people officials? How does that actually work? And we got an amazing 18 people on our show tonight. Wow. I picked up 360 subscribers in the last couple of weeks with this new site, but I can only get 17 people on my show. That's official, right? But like when I post my video, preamble to these shows, there's a little checkbox there for, I'll show it to you actually. The whole world is insane. So that's the preamble. I can't change anything. That's the one we're watching right now. Hang on. So yeah, we're inside the video we're watching right now. And I just want to show you something. hang on. So allowed embedding is actually turned off. Now I have to check that when I do the preamble. Once I do everything, I have to go back in and check it again after. And I don't think I can get that. So after the show, I have to go in and check allow embedding again after the show starts. Not only that, it can't share it. You can't send it out. Well, changes were saved. Hang on, I'll show you one more. So I have to do it 3 times to get the Laudy embedding so you can embed it on other sites. But they got, I might as well show you a bunch of stuff while we're doing this very quick. So after the show, published subscribers feed and notify subscribers. I can't check that box. That box is closed to me. They won't let me send it out to the subscription feeds and notify subscribers. Now, after the show is over, if you want to come and find a video, what you got to do is click on Uploads and go down to Past Live Stream. For the first 12 hours, that's the only way you're going to find tonight's show. For the next 12 hours after the show is over, if you're at my site, you have to click on the video button. So click on video, you see uploads, click on that, go down to past live stream, and because the current one is there now. But as soon as the show is over, if you can't find that video, that's the only way you can find it. And the shows are always a few moments longer, 10 seconds longer, but it takes 12 hours. It takes 12 hours before I can download my video. And any other live stream I can download as soon as the show is over. But mine takes 12 hours and the video is always around 10, 11 seconds longer. The comments are the same thing for 12 hours. For 12 hours, the comments will say 0. And there could be 100 comments there, which never is, of course. But it could be, say, 10 comments. But it'll always say 0 for 12 hours. So my video is restricted for 12 hours. And as you can see, 19 people on my show. 19 people on one of the most important topics on the planet with a great format. I got a brilliant format here that I do my shows in. So think about what the EU is doing and Norway and Iceland is doing. So nuclear waste being processed during an explosion in France had radioactivity of 17 becquerels a kilogram, which is 30 times less than what Japan considers safe to eat at that time. Japan had a limit at 500 becquerels a kilogram. I'll show you that coming up originally. And then in 2012, they changed it to 100 becquerels a kilogram. So 17 becquerels a kilogram was being put on a nuclear repository. But yet Japan says that's safe in food. But Japan is a lunatic. Japan should be... Some country should just go nuke Japan and get rid of it. No offense to the great people in Japan, but you're murdering our planet, stupid. Radiation and health specialists, children with 11 becquerels a kilogram of just cesium. And if you got cesium, it's going to be plutonium and americium and neptunium and strontium and all the other fission products. Start to see heart problems. That was a Chernobyl study. Look at the radiation. Well, the only you can't trust the Geiger counter shops anymore. They've been taken over by the nuclear industry. But an inspector, they're very expensive, is the bottom line for radiation detectors. And so no matter what's on your Geiger counter, you want to multiply it by 600 because that gives you the pulsing from uranium, plutonium, and the curium isotopes. And curium isotopes is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods. And curium isotopes need lead shielding and 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. This is important. So I keep drilling it, hopefully, into people, and they pick up on it subconsciously, and they can use my narrative. You can take my narrative into a courtroom and win a case. My narratives are solid. They're rock solid. There's no point trying to run an educational program if I'm not going to be providing the documentation. Before Fukushima, 100 becquerels a kilogram of cesium was nuclear waste. After 100 becquerels a kilogram is safe to eat. But it's not safe to eat because 11 becquerels a kilogram, children will see heart problems. So shipping this to the EU is the best way of destroying all the children in the United Kingdom, the EU and Iceland and Norway. The nuclear industry has captured those key positions and is now intending to murder everybody. I know it sounds incredible, but this is actually what they're doing. How much documentation do you need? Because I'll bring it to you. Japan government to drastically reduce the allowable levels of radiation in food. That was October 28, 2011. 100 becquerels a kilogram expected by April 2012. So the current limit of 500 becquerels per kilogram for meat, fish, and vegetables. So they were murdering people on a whole different scale. And vegetables is also expected to be lowered by about 1/5 in April. So the upcoming change is welcomed. Though why is it safe to eat food contaminated with 500 becquerels a kilogram of cesium right now, but not 6 months from now? And why were some experts still puzzled? The radiation checks, by the way, of foods in Japan are only 1% of what Belarus was checking in the past year. Japan's not checking it because you won't buy it if they check it. They can't sell it if they check it. Fukushima radiation may be eating holes in the people's brains. That's the hospital. And military was brought in to hide the true radiation levels. Officials covering up the dire consequences of the crisis. Worry over high numbers of cancers being detected. And public is suffering radioactive related diseases, heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. And so I post these, I do the show live, but the video is there if you get a chance to watch it. I don't expect people to watch it live, but you expect to get more than 20 people, right, on your live show. And it's not always going to be the same 20 people, right? The video is there. You can watch it tonight, tomorrow, at your leisures, right? And I get that. See, I'm doing what's got to get done on my end. And then the video is always there in case people got time or are interested and want to watch it. I appreciate everybody. But I'm being censored, incredibly censorship on my end, for many years now. And there's a lot more than 20 people watching it, but they're actually putting that number there to try to discourage me and you, right? Water cannon unable to spray reactor. But how can you discourage somebody that is doing something that has to get done like I'm doing? Is having a conversation and showing the documentation and asking the question, should the EU have a referendum? We got 20 votes, and everybody voted yes. What? Somebody voted no? You don't think you should have a referendum? Speak up. Who are you? Who the hell is so stupid they think they shouldn't have a referendum? Who the hell could be that stupid? What kind of moron? Why wouldn't you have a referendum? Like, really? How can you be so heartless you wouldn't have a referendum like Taiwan done? Taiwan had a referendum. Excuse me. A referendum. What's wrong with a referendum? High radiation levels around the plant prevented the helicopters from dumping water on the spent fuel rods at Fukushima. Let's go back to day one, basically. There were 600 helicopter pilots died in Chernobyl, but if you go look up the Wikipedia, they only tell you, and United Nations, they'll only tell you that 28 people died. So why would you trust the UN or IAEA or ERPA or UNSCR or any of these controlled oppositions when they're doing stuff like that? How can you ever trust them again after that? Radiation is streaming into the atmosphere after number 4 pool boiled dry in a fire. Streaming in. That explains 60 million one-ton bags, I suppose. Fukushima nuclear plume covered most of the North America, now over the North Atlantic, including the Caribbean and the Canadian East Coast. So it's not just Fukushima Prefecture, all of Japan, and all of the Northern Hemisphere. But why would you eat food from ground zero anywhere in Japan? Because they're shipping it all over the country. And they're also they're grinding up radioactive contaminants, bringing it to all the prefectures, and burning it in the community's incinerators. These are dirty bombs. Radioactivity covering the Northern Hemisphere by the 31st of March. It just happened on March 11, 2011. So within a few weeks, all the Southern Hemisphere was covered too. All the projections stop after a short period of time because otherwise it covers all the Southern Hemisphere too, see? And the word leaking, I just despise that word leaking. I despise it. I absolutely despise the word leaking because we're talking about destroyed buildings. They can't leak, right? That's it was reactor 3. If you breathe the plume coming out of there, it's instant death right on the spot. Right, that's an instant death. And this is a nuclear wasteland. If you work there, you're going to get sick and die soon after. That's a nuclear wasteland. In fact, the top bags and the side bags are supposed to be clean soil so they can shield you from all the other bags. Rain with 20 million particles of radioactive iodine. This is just one isotope. Now, they use iodine-131 because they'll tell you, oh, it's only got an 8-day half-life. So anybody who don't know the nuances thinks it's gone in 16 days, right? But there's 10 half-lives. But not only that, when you got 131, and you're talking 20 million particles per liter of rainfall sustained on the Northern Hemisphere. That's just one. So there's going to be 10 times more iodine-132 in that same sample. 30 times more iodine-133 in that same sample, 31 times more iodine-129 in that same sample. And iodine-132 and 133, which is 10 and 30 times more respectively, is 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands than the 131, which is extremely effective at radiating the thyroid gland. And it turns it into a radioactive hormone and distributes it out through your body. Sees the problem with it. And now you have, that ends up in your mutated stem cells and everything else. So why would you want food from this area? Would you actually go to a nuclear wasteland looking for a deal on potatoes and vegetables? Say you lived 50 miles away from this nuclear meltdown and you knew that there was cheap food there. Would you go buy it? No. But what the EU and Norway and Iceland, which has now been captured by the nuclear industry, they're going to change the law. So when you go to the shop, you're going to be buying radioactive food. It's not going to have a label on it. It shouldn't be coming into your country ever under any circumstances. But it only takes a handful of people in key positions to make this possible. And this is what we're seeing happen over and over and over. And there should be an international tribunal where you go take these people get arrested, they're exported out of the country to a tribunal like a Nuremberg trial. They're put on trial for shipping deadly food into the country, and then once they're found guilty, are summarily executed publicly and gruesomely, hopefully. That's 100% what should be happening. These are the worst murderers in human history is what we're seeing. The most cruelest, degenerate people in human history are the people now, a handful of people. There's only a handful of people. Why wouldn't you hold those criminals? They're not people, they're criminals. U.S. states hit with extremely large peak of Fukushima radioactive material. Yeah, significant amount of plutonium released for months. For months. Radioactivity from the plant was measured globally and blanketed the entire northern hemisphere. But you still shouldn't buy food from Japan, from ground zero. They're growing it right around an ongoing multiple nuclear meltdowns. Why would you buy food from there? You would never do it knowingly. And so, why should the EU be, you're next? If you don't fight for the EU, if you don't fight for Iceland, if you don't fight for Norway, you're next. Your country is next. As far as I can tell, everybody in the nuclear industry needs to go on trial. Everybody. Every nuclear scientist, even if they're on crutches, they're 90 years old, should be taken out of the old age homes and put on trial. All of them. They're 100% Machiavellian. They're the definition of evil. They've lost control. They don't have any attributes of a human for some reason. So you got to go through all of these abandoned communities, all the nuclear wasteland, to get to the farmers' fields. What part about that being wrong is that people can't wrap their minds around, I wonder? So the West Coast was hit with 220 million atoms per liter of iodine-129 with a 15 million year half-life with 10 half-lives. Long past the human experience, that'll be irradiating all. So whatever happens to humans is going to happen to insects and birds and mammals and animals, bacteria. Why wouldn't you fight this? Why wouldn't you resist this? Why wouldn't you try to come up with solutions for this? Why would you do the opposite and hide it and then by proxy destroy all species and humanity? Why go that route to protect a bunch of people that are doing this, by the way, for a paycheck? They're murdering everybody so they can get a paycheck. Officials admit deadly Fukushima meltdown cover-up. TEPCO president. We lied about the meltdowns. It was a cover-up, it's a grave issue, unprecedented nuclear disaster, bad as it gets, and an unpardonable breach of trust. Therefore, all the nuclear industry should pay for that. All the nuclear industry should pay for that. UN committee chairman studying Fukushima radiation impact says we wouldn't expect to see health effects in children, workers, or anybody else. This is absurd. The studies clearly showed that radiation is harmful to every species, not just humans. But by saying that and setting a precedence like that, but think about it, we wouldn't expect to see health effects from multiple nuclear meltdowns. Well, if you don't expect health effects, why'd you pick up 60 million one-ton bags for? And then you got your scientists saying it's the duty of the scientific community to reduce the public's fear and anxiety about radiation. I can't imagine why the police don't arrest these people. I can't wrap my mind around it. Let's send the police radioactive food from Fukushima and maybe they'll get their asses in gear. So UN committee chairman studying Fukushima radiation impact says you wouldn't expect to see health effects in children, workers, or anyone else. You got a street there. In the first year, 7 people dropped dead on a shopping street in less than 1 year. not too far from a nuclear meltdown. 7 people dropped dead on the street. That one street. Do you got a street like that in your town? In your country? On your continent? The answer is probably no, unless you're from there. So when the UN radiation official, top United Nations radiation official, the top official at United Nations on radiation claims Fukushima not expected to have any serious impact on human health. That's the definition. Well, United Nations is just a corporation of pro-nuclear countries that promote nuclear, by the way. And somehow they're on a pedestal. In fact, soon it's going to be illegal to criticize United Nations. It's illegal right now to criticize the World Health Organization. It's illegal to question 911's official story. But it's not. You have an obligation under your constitutions, your Bill of Rights, your Magna Cartas. You're obligated to question them as a citizen of those doctrines which make up 13,646 children out of 40,000 have thyroid tumors. Pre-Fukushima was 1 in a million. That's going to be the same now for Europe. A handful of people are now going to destroy Europe. It's absurd. Government session reveals 400,000 times normal radioactive xenon levels in Chiba, which is 20 kilometers away from Tokyo, which is several hundred kilometers away from the nuclear meltdown. So don't buy food from Fukushima, but definitely don't buy it either from Chiba or Tokyo. Tokyo was brutalized by radioactive fallout. The environment abruptly changed for half of Japan. No, it was all of Japan, right? Media blindly reports TEPCO's false radiation levels. Media blindly reports everything they say. There is no debate for 10 years. Government model shows Fukushima radioactive gas near Tokyo skyrocketed 10 billion times post-nuclear weapons fallout. Very high concentrations recorded all monitoring posts in the northern hemisphere. So why would you want to eat food from that country, period? It's bad enough you're going to eat food from America or Canada, because that's brutalized. But to eat food from the actual ground zero, which is all of Japan, because it's still melting down, it's still hemorrhaging out of there. It's still gone into a China syndrome there, right? Highly radioactive glass rained on Tokyo. 500 trillion becquerels a kilogram. This is curry and fission products. This changes the understanding of the disaster. Significant consequences for human health. United Nations said, no problem. We don't expect to see any problem. But why would you pick up all those bags if you don't expect to see a problem? Over 60 million Japanese irradiated by Fukushima. 50,000 square miles of Japan is highly contaminated. Millions need to be evacuated. The nuclear industry has decided to sacrifice them. And it is a crime. That's a crime. More than 70% of the country is brutally contaminated. You can't eat food from ground zero. And even the dust in the fog is 4,000 becquerels a kilogram of cesium. Contamination never disappears. Top Japan official, let the elderly people hurry up and die. Do you think he got fired for that or promoted? He got promoted. Fukushima official Groups demanding measures to protect people from radiation are lefty shits. I can't help but only feel pity for their lack of intelligence. Children on a playground with a Geiger counter. I've never dreamt I would see that day. I never imagined I can see that day. Growing rice during shipping it worldwide in a nuclear wasteland. Japan Deputy Prime Minister talks about learning from the Nazis. Same guy who said previously to let the elderly people hurry up and die. The evacuees are living in little shacks and they're charged. The vending machine there sings "Don't Give Up on Fukushima." Baby, don't give up on Fukushima, baby. So, would you eat food from this zone here? Would you live there? If not, then you won't eat the radioactive food coming out of there. The World Health Organization accused of underestimating the disaster's impact on humans' health. The cover-up of true radiation levels of Fukushima residents were exposed to. A cover-up of the true levels is still ongoing. And now and those bags are only meant to last a couple of years, by the way. Japan Times, it's okay for babies to drink the radioactive milk because adults have natural potassium in the body. That's typical what you hear from the British apologists, like Geraldine Thomas. People that tell you that potassium-40 is the same as anthropogenic man-made radiation should be arrested. They should be arrested, right? Because they're doing that on purpose to confuse you. They're doing that on purpose to trick you and deceive you into becoming complacent and living, drinking in that environment or eating the food from that environment. 27,000 becquerels a kilogram cesium in a kindergarten near the west coast of Japan, 200 kilometers from the meltdowns. Everything runs downhill towards the ocean, by the way. This is absurd. All of these pictures are absurd. Authorities hid the radioactive plume forecast to avoid evacuation. Mayor says it's akin to murder. Well, it is murder. That is murder. They're building a greenhouse in a rice paddy field full of 1-ton bags of radiation to grow food there and sell it and ship it worldwide. Tokyo tea leaves with 2,700 becquerels a kilogram of radioactive cesium picked by children, elementary school children. This is absurd stuff. These are crimes. All of them are crimes. Japan bans radioactive green tea from area 40 miles southwest of Tokyo. So 40 miles on the other side of Tokyo, away from Fukushima. A recall of the tea was measured about 570 becquerels of cesium. Again, they're only acknowledging cesium. The legal limit is 500 becquerels, which is not a legal limit. That was before they changed it to 100 becquerels. And not only that, they gave farmers Geiger counters and told the farmers that if it's over 500 becquerels, you can't sell it. There was no independent institutions checking it. Still true today. Tokyo drinking water unsafe. Once it's unsafe, that's the end of it. All the pipes are irradiated permanently. Not only that, your water filtration system now is irradiated. You need to replace it every week, the entire system, because it's radioactive. So you get rid of the radiation, but the pipes are still radioactive. It's the whole industry only exists because people remain silent. I refuse to remain silent. I'm not able to. There's zero possibility that I can give up what I'm doing. Zero. I can't sit in silence and let this happen. I don't understand how anybody can. I really don't. I was shocked after the first couple of years. I realized the media weren't stupid. the media didn't write the stories. The nuclear industry wrote the stories, and the media got a kickback for publishing it. And there's zero possibility they were going to question anything the industry says. If the industry says the radiation will make you stronger, faster, taller, turn you into a superhero, the media will come out and regurgitate that narrative, tell you can't stand to see the TV again. Yellow rain recently reported in Tokyo also happened after Chernobyl. The government assured the residences in Tokyo, 36 million people in metropolitan Tokyo, it was pollen. But if you remember, go back and look at the footage, it was actually snowing. There was no pollen, it was snow season. It was still winter there. Radioactive tea above legal limits 100 miles southwest, 100 miles past Tokyo, on the other side of Tokyo. The tea is incredibly radioactive. So everything else is too, see? Medical journal, now that was increased to 20,000 plus people died right away in the first couple of weeks after the event started of heart attacks. There was a spike in heart attacks in America. There was an increase of infant mortality throughout the United States and Canada and Mexico. So with increasing regulations in the use of artificial... By the way, paper suits can't protect you. With increasing regulations in the use of artificial food colors today, the bumpy road ahead for artificial food colors. But there's no bumpy road ahead for radioactive poison food. Do you get it? Do you know that today, more than a decade after publication of Southampton 6 study, regulations are still being tightened for certain colors, but there's no regulations for radioactive food. So Taiwan, nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan starting April the 6th. People should stay home, take off their clothing immediately, and cleanse the nuclear contaminants. And then 2018, Taiwan had a referendum. Should we import food from a nuclear wasteland? And the majority of the people, not all of them for some reason, but the majority of the people said no. We don't want food from a nuclear wasteland. They had a referendum. So I got a poll up there. Should the EU, Iceland, and Scotland, should the EU, Norway, and Iceland have a referendum rather than a handful of people make that decision? Because if there's no labels on the food, how your country is next, right? You can't sit in silence because they're going to murder everything and everybody for their paycheck. This is what they do for a paycheck. They murder everybody for a paycheck. So Taiwan had the balls to tell people to stay home when it happened because there's radioactive fallout. And Taiwan had the balls to have a referendum rather than have a handful of people murder everybody in their country. Taiwan softening, think about that headline. Taiwan softening of Fukushima ban under threat. So they thought Taiwan was just going to say, yeah, go ahead and ship the food in. Instead, it had made a ballot call. Japan hopes that the Taiwan government will lift the current ban on foods from Fukushima surrounding areas has hit another hurdle. The largest opposition party in Taiwan submitted a referendum request on what has been dubbed anti-nuclear food. What has been dubbed? Anti-murder food. Anti-nuclear food. Why would you want food from a nuclear wasteland? And so the same media, Pearly Neo, doesn't understand it's wrong. Says it's political and not scientific. Taiwan confirms a nuclear food referendum to proceed as Japan voices disappointment. Well, Japan should shut its pie hole. Japan shouldn't grow food in a nuclear wasteland. Grow it somewhere else. Go to another country, rent out a couple of 100,000 acres of land and grow your food there. Don't grow it in Japan anywhere, let alone the actual Fukushima prefecture itself. Why would you do that? What's the point of that? I cannot help but feel disappointment over such an unexpected outcome. You thought that, really? You think that's unexpected, that people want to have a referendum? Well, first off, you're not supposed to grow food in a nuclear wasteland. Taiwan's ban on Japanese food hindering, so then Japan retaliates and says, well, you can't join the Trans-Pacific Trade Pact if you won't let us poison all the people in your country. That's Twilight Zone stuff. That's actual Twilight Zone stuff. Rice grown near Fukushima plant cleared for sale. The farmer, I wouldn't eat it. We feel guilty growing it and selling it. He said, do you understand the meaning of the word, understand the meaning of D in the word decontamination? We're just tilling it deeper and spreading the radiation thinly. We are not removing the contamination. No wonder that the radiation levels has not gone down. We measured the radioactivity in the air. It has not gotten down at all in the ground or the air. Listen to him.
あと一つ言っておくことがあるんですけれども、福島県は農作物は出荷の前に全部検査しないと出荷できません。今は100ベクレル以下っていうことになってますけれども、農家が生産している私は分かりますよ、これが何ベクレルあるって。放射の要は100ベクレル以下だったら出荷できるわけですから、私は食べませんよ。買って食べる人は放射能メイド持って買って食ってるってどうなの？俺らは分かってんだよ。罪の意識になるの作ってなって。自分は食わねえけど人の人に食わせてんの。どう思いますか？ちょっと答えてください。
Okay, so you got to go to your farm. You're going to drive past this kind of stuff for an hour and a half to get to your farm. And then you're going to grow food in a nuclear wasteland. Does that make any sense? Rice planted 10 miles from the Fukushima ongoing meltdowns. Residents can't even stay in the town overnight, but it's intended for sale. So you tell me there's not something fundamentally wrong with the nuclear industry. You're going to tell me that the nuclear industry has the right to breathe the same air as me or you. And can anybody really tell me that the nuclear industry has anybody's best intention at heart? They have no one's intention at heart. They don't even know that they're human, I don't think. Humans don't do stuff like this. Why would you grow food in that environment? What kind of moron could do something like that? What kind of bird brain could actually do something like that? Help wanted ad seeks employees able to carry out a conversation. So does it sound like there's nuclear scientists and academics working there? You better really start asking yourself some hard questions. Are you going to, is the EU really going to let a handful of people poison everybody in the country? By the way, you're going to excrete this stuff, so now all your sewage is radioactive. Everywhere you're spitting becomes radioactive. All your utensils in your house becomes radioactive. You cooking and eating this food, everything becomes radioactive. All your plates, all your spoons, all your forks. So even if you stop eating the food, everything is still radioactive. You're putting radioactive metal in your mouth. Why is this going on? This should never be happening. We shouldn't even be having this conversation. This is not supposed to be happening. Why are we sitting in silence? And the planet's sitting in silence. There is no resistance. These are the old headlines. The first couple of years there was resistance, but then it stopped. Official back from Fukushima, invisible blanket of death covers everything. Former UN World Health Organization experts blast the UN. Fukushima report warns of a cancer spike. Well, how can you not? There are no sparrows, says the bird watchers in Nagayo. Downtown area was total void of any forms of birds. In the wintertime, the snow melts, goes down through all the bags, and washes the radiation into the water tables. Plutonium escaped the Fukushima reactors as gas. It was a colossal 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. Can't be detected with Geiger counters. My Geiger counter up there is real time, but it's not going to pick up plutonium, or the curium, or uranium, or neptunium, or strontium, or any of the hot particles. Terrible things are looming for the children. They must be evacuated, yet nothing's done. It's a criminal nation. That's a very astute observation, isn't it? Well, they're alive, but they're full of illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. They're not alive. 1 in every 2 is dying of cancer. Cancer takes a long time to manifest. I am amazed myself, but because they're not right at the nuclear meltdown fuel rods themselves, they're consuming radiation. This is why all the weapons testing is why we see all the cancer and diabetes. Like diabetes is from radioactive fallout. They found plutonium in every sample. Radiation absorbing bacteria is everywhere on the paved surfaces. Nuclear expert in Japan, plutonium is everywhere. It is everywhere. After the Fukushima reactors exploded, it's being redeposited in unanticipated locations. And black radioactive dust just wherever you go, it's running right into the Pacific Ocean. Inhaling particles increase the radiation exposure of a factor of 1 trillion. So you only need one exposure, eventually you'll get sick. But if you're consuming it and eating it all the time, and so in Japan in the first year, there was 865,000 extra cancers. Right? And you got to look for diabetes, you got to look for Down syndrome, you got to look for autism, you got to look for heart problems and liver problems and lung and respiratory and pituitary and thyroid and adrenaline. And like your thyroid, you get all kinds of other illnesses because you're making radioactive hormones and distributing that to all the organs and everything in your body, right? And it's showing up. So it becomes more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless. So extra 865,000 cancers in the first year. We may not be able to live in Japan someday. Well, you're not able to live in Japan right now, but you're getting away with it because you're not right at the nuclear meltdown, but you're still bioaccumulating the radiation. And so you have a countdown timer. And then you have the crazies. Japanese mayors say students are gaining knowledge by eating radioactive food in school lunches. Where I come from, that mayor would get, a bunch of people would grab him, and that would be the end of him. He'd be found at the low tide line unconscious if he was lucky. He'd be gone. Where I'm from. Don't be a chicken, the mayor tells the parents who are concerned about their children are eating radioactive lunches. That'd be the last time he said that to any parents. I can guarantee you if he was in my neck of the woods. Anywhere here in Canada, he would have been disappeared. So would you eat food from that farmland? Plutonium detected all over a village 25 miles away. Something terrible, dreadful is happening. The mayor, please don't tell the victims. 6 in 10 Fukushima children tested have diabetes. The head of the Tokyo area medical clinic, we are expecting diabetes in children from Fukushima radiation. Well, pretty soon that's going to be the EU. We are expecting diabetes in children from eating the food we imported from Japan. If that doesn't make you contemplate, wait a second, what all of these pictures I'm showing you, they had 150,000 sites like that full of bags before they started bringing it to certain locations. So in Japan in 2019, 14.2% per 100,000 live births need open heart surgery of neonates and infants. And you've seen that after Chernobyl, right? Newborn heart problems surged after Fukushima, and you've seen the same thing after Chernobyl. But like 14,200 open heart surgeries for every 100,000 children. That's absurd numbers. Go tell that to your doctor. Tell your doctor about that study where 14.2%, which is 14,200 children per 100,000, need open heart surgery in Japan. That's across all of Japan. Those cancers I showed you earlier was across the whole country of Japan. As the public, possibly worldwide, sickens over time, the truth will come out about the nuclear meltdown and the nuclear poison. So when you go away and you abandon all your animals and leave them tied up in the barn, do you really want something like that in your country? Why would you want that in your country? Fukushima is the most serious man-made disaster in human history. Obesity rates nearly doubled the Japan's average, and an excessive weight gain after a nuclear crisis is a marker of radiation brain damage. They can't find radiation on the children because the Geiger counters don't work. But the whole country is covered in radiation because you picked up 60 million one-ton bags. Pneumonia cases surged in Japan. You've seen the same thing after Chernobyl. Temporary radioactive soil storage site hinders the Fukushima farmers. So you see that's a big major media, right? That's a major media. You see the picture coming up? Temporary radioactive soil storage site is hurting the Fukushima farmers. Not stopping them, but hurting them. And this is the picture that they're showing in that story. So you got all these bags and a farmer growing and harvesting food right alongside the radiation. A farmer harvests rice in a bag or in paddies in Katsura, Fukushima Prefecture, 2016. Another rice paddy in the foreground serves as a temporary storage site for piles of black plastic bags containing radioactive soil. Wide swaths of temporary storage sites for radioactive soil and other waste generated from decontamination work in areas around the crippled Fukushima #1 nuclear power plant are hampering the locals from resuming farming, it has been learned. Slightly over 90% of the temporary storage sites lie on farmlands. The local governments are deprived of the very foundation of restoring farming, a key local industry. In those areas, why farmers are concerned about possible damage caused by harmful rumors. So that's considered a harmful rumor that the food is radioactive if you grow it in a nuclear wasteland surrounded by thousands and thousands of one-ton bags. Now you're creating harmful rumors. That's the media telling you you're creating rumors if you think the food is radioactive by growing it in a radioactive nuclear wasteland. See, I can destroy the nuclear industry in just 12 months if I had a foundation supporting me. I could end the nuclear industry. If I had the way to fund, put together a team, I can shove it out there. I've been at this for years and years and years. I can destroy their narratives. The Environment Ministry estimated 22 million cubic meters of contaminated soil will be generated across the Fukushima prefecture, but they picked it up in all, including Chiba, right alongside Tokyo, and Tokyo. So over 60 million bags is the new number. But the interim storage facilities are expected to be able to accommodate no more than 12 million cubic meters of the waste by 2020. So as long as temporary storage sites remains here, farmers will lose their motivation and face a shortage of successors. Good. They should be arrested. That's murder to grow food there and ship it. It's actual murder. That's murder. Oh, airborne radiation near Fukushima nuke plant still far higher than the government's max. 2018. So they're claiming 8.89 microsieverts per hour in Katsuru. It's not, you don't measure airborne radiation in microsieverts. If you do, you need to run. You're talking huge doses of atoms. And the highest reading registered was only 8.9 microsieverts. Like, come on, man. You had 29 million becquerels a square meter in Tokyo. And you're measuring it temporary. So you go back to that story there. That's where that farmer is growing in the same place where they had the highest readings. Diachi Elementary, 4 million becquerels a square meter of cesium in the soil. They're just checking gamma. They're not checking beta or alpha or neutrons, for God's sakes. From a school in Chiba, 20 kilometers from Tokyo. Shocking that the officials made it mandatory for children to eat Fukushima rice in the school lunches. Officials, murderers, lunatics, crazies, monsters. Like Russian roulette, only 10% of the school lunches in Fukushima tested for radiation. The officials didn't even know the testing equipment was available, didn't know how to use it. And 10%, first off, they're not even going to check what's going to the EU anymore. The EU shouldn't be getting anything. Nobody should from Japan. Why would you want to give anything, buy food from Japan? What kind of bizarre... If anybody sees this and still buys food from Japan, you're insane. You won't. If you watch this, you won't be buying food from Japan. Almost 1 million times more radioactive fallout in Ibaraki soil than in 2009. And that's a low estimate. So again, it's not just Fukushima prefecture. It's all of Japan. But I mean, the northern hemisphere got covered in radioactive fallout. Forecast map of radioactive clouds shows threat to the U.S. West Coast. Cesium-137 plume forecast for North America and Europe from France. They're showing Chernobyl in the bottom one. And the top one. I got under one. What have I got under? Hang on. That's not it. There we go. That's Europe right there. That's the Atlantic Ocean right there. That's America, the United States, and Canada. Iceland and Greenland got hammered. Iceland and Norway got hammered. France got hammered. All the EU countries got hammered. Everything in the Pacific. The entire Northern Hemisphere. The plume didn't stop there. Why would you take food from a nuclear wasteland? Why do that? Okay, the last one. Seniors urged to eat the Fukushima rice to help the farmers and protect the young people. So again, you see this mindset to help the farmers. So poison the seniors so the farmers can get a paycheck is what they're saying. A Tokyo senior is waging an individual effort to get the elderly people to eat the rice grown in Fukushima prefecture to help the local farmers struggling with rumors. This is 2012. That their crops are radioactive, make sure the grain isn't consumed by the vulnerable younger generation. So if it's a rumor, why are you worried about the younger generation consuming it? You can't make that up if you wanted to. Consumers have shunned the Fukushima rice due to radiation fears. No, due to the fact that the whole country now is covered in radioactivity. The elderly must eat the Fukushima rice. That's Japan's biggest newspaper, by the way. They're calling on seniors to place orders by fax or online via social networking sites, and Facebook including Facebook, and you can order the rice and have it delivered, cash on delivery. Facebook in 2012 was allowing the nuclear industry to murder people. About 700 kilograms was brought by an elderly care facility in Tokyo. That should make you vomit. This should make you sick to your stomach that they done that. That could be your loved ones in that elderly care facility being murdered. And back then, this was brutal radiation. Huge numbers. Why did they keep growing it? Does this look normal to you? You think they're picking it up because they're bored? However, is a minute amount compared with Fukushima's 240,000 ton annual rice yield. The Fukushima prefecture government, the rice that didn't sell was turned into sake. Nobody bought the sake, so they opened a sake shop in New York City. And it was opened and ran by the Fukushima prefecture government. Try making that one up. I double dare you. 240,000 tons. Now Japan is metric, right? So 2,200 pounds a ton. It's 528,000. But the numbers were actually much higher than that. It's 850,000 or something pounds, 850 million pounds a year of rice grown throughout the Fukushima prefecture. He said the reason for doing this not only because he wants to help the Fukushima farmers, but because he wants to make sure the elderly eat as much Fukushima rice as possible to prevent the children from accidentally eating the radiation. So why not stop the farmers from murdering the elderly and the children? Wouldn't that be a better idea? Or am I just being silly? There are no regulations obliging restaurants and makers of the boxed lunches to list the origin of the rice they use. Like, the people that are growing it and selling it, and the people that are using it and know it, I would never go to Japan. Why would you go to Japan? Why would you buy anything for Japan unless you're going to burn it, put it in a video and post it online? This may lead to children eating the Fukushima rice, acknowledging the rice is bad, but yet claiming the farmers need to make money, so it's okay to poison everybody so the farmers can get a paycheck. That person should have been arrested. Therefore, why don't the elderly, whose potential for suffering health damage is the same as anybody else? It's not lower than it is for youth. The youths are 100 times more susceptible to radiation than the adults are. Eat all of the Fukushima rice, he asked. That person should be in jail forever. As fears linger, Fukushima rice rebounds under secrecy. Under secrecy. A Fukushima prefectural government worker advertises rice from Fukushima at a Tokyo commercial facility in 2018. Shipments of Fukushima rice have rebounded. The bulk of the annual harvest is designated for industrial use, mainly by convenience stores and restaurants, and simply labeled domestic product. So rather than not grow it in a nuclear wasteland, they continued to grow it, they never stopped growing it, and they label it domestic, and they've been shipping it worldwide, murdering your loved ones and you and everybody else. The comeback has been driven by solid demand for industrial used rice for products sold at convenience stores and dishes served at restaurants. The comeback is driven by people who don't know any better, and those who do are buying it cheap and selling it more expensive and selling it to convenience stores and restaurants. That's indiscriminate murder, where people don't even know what's on the label. That's actually murder. That's cold-blooded murder. Ghost towns, all good. No, it's all good, but the food is not radioactive. But the ghost towns are. There's high demand for industrial use rice from Fukushima Prefecture. It's cheap, one distributor said. Do you really think these little tiny robots are going to do anything at a nuclear meltdown? Right, that's meant to trick you and deceive you, manipulate you. It's pathetic. That's what that is. It's pathetic. Industrial use rice only carries a domestic label with no mention of the production area. That's how they're selling the rice. They're doing the same thing the United Nations, the EU, and now Iceland Norway is going to do the same thing. Since 2012, not 2011, but since 2012, all bags of rice produced in Fukushima have been subject to government's blanket testing, which is 100% not true. And what was going on before that? The farmers were checking it themselves. They were given Geiger counters that don't work in a nuclear wasteland. They never even started picking up bags till almost 2013. They never stopped growing food there. Like, the nuclear industry has no right to exist. And it's you or them. Since August 2015, no rice was found with radioactive substances exceeding the central government safety standards. They're only looking first off for cesium. The biggest byproduct is curium and uranium and plutonium. They're not checking for cesium. It's every facet of the story is mind-boggling that we're still having this conversation. It's mind-boggling that there's no academics having that conversation. Okay, well, I'm going to stop the show right there. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. We did raise 120 last night from James Lucid, and we thank him so much. I wish everybody else would donate something. It's been so long. We're so far in the hole. I'm doing the best I can. I go to war every single day. Every single day I go to war for you and this planet and all the species. Every single day. But it be a lot more easier if people would support me. They took down my site with 24,000 subscribers and 1,600 videos. I need help now more than ever. I'm way in the hole. How am I going to get out of the hole and keep this operation running forward if people don't help me? All I can do is ask. I will keep working as hard as I can. I will never quit, and I will never slow down. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night, folks. No, I provide all the documentation. And the poll is 28 votes say we should have a referendum for the EU. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Take care, folks.